Good morning, fellow investors. My name is Péter Mészáros, and my guest today is Robert Eckford from Rua Gold. Thank you, Robert, for being here.
Very nice to be back with you, Peter.
And I am still a shareholder, and thank you for being here and provide us with an update about the company. And because also a lot happened last year, but even more is expected for this year. And if you could introduce the company to new investors, that would be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, sure. I'll bring up our corporate presentation, which is available on our website, just to help talk through the strategy and some pictures, so you're not looking at my head the whole time.
Thank you, thank you. I'm also a visual type, so I'm happy if you can show us something.
But it is a good time to be introduced to this story. I mean, we're always appreciative of yourself as a long-term shareholder, but it's also and it's been a good run up until now. But I think the next 12 months are going to be really key for Rua Gold and Rua Gold shareholders, and we'll talk through why that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
One, just to set the scene. So Rua Gold is a New Zealand high-grade gold explorer. That's our primary focus. And we're aggressively moving in New Zealand towards the development phase. And we've picked New Zealand for a very intentional reason. New Zealand is, in our view, the best jurisdiction out there. And I'm not going to go through every single slide on the presentation, but just focus on key ones. And this is the first one we'll talk about is why the hell we're in New Zealand. Because New Zealand isn't known as a mining destination across the generalist investor. And that's the opportunity right now. We're a little 100 million market cap company. I think obviously we should be much higher than that. And one of the key reasons for that is the pillar of New Zealand, that it got ranked #1 in the Fraser Index in Oceania last year. And that's above all of Australia, and Australia gets split out by state. So you've got a more permissive and better regime, a better government, a more supportive jurisdiction for mining than all of Australia, which is one of the biggest mining hubs of the world. Overall in the world, it was ranked #12. And the key driver as to why it's being ranked so well is part of the permissive regime there. In New Zealand, it's the only country in the whole world you can get a mine permitted in 6 months. And that is our key driver from going from exploration to development, is because you have this amazing short timeline that you can get a mine permitted. And it's not cutting any corners. You're not taking out any of the steps that you shouldn't be doing. What's happening is that instead of, for instance, what happens in Canada, you've got layers of approval, you've got stage gates of approval that you go through. In New Zealand, you've got a nice small country of 5 million people, and essentially they thought about this a lot more pragmatically, and they said, let's put all of these different groups that need to approve a project into one panel and make sure they all work on it concurrently. And that was able to reduce the permitting time down to 6 months. So an amazing jurisdiction to be in, because I can sit here as an exploration company telling our shareholders that our plan as a company is to be producing gold by 2028. And that's after a year of construction. So, and we'll talk through that timeline as we look at the assets, but that's really why we're in New Zealand. Putting aside the fact that it's an amazing geology, it's really high grade, over 40 million ounces of gold has already come out of New Zealand and is still being produced today. It is a really good spot to be to move your projects forward. The team behind this and who's going to be doing this isn't a group of explorationists either, which is important. We're not going to be plugging 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 meters of drill holes into this and then looking to sell it and sitting on our hands. We're a team that have built 8 mines. We've raised $2 billion in capital and counting, and we've had $11 billion in exits. So we are company builders. We're not just mine builders. We're not just explorationists. We really see the opportunity in this business, and this is not our first time. Me personally, I co-founded Aris Mining with Neil Woodger back in 2020. That was my last job before starting Rua Gold. Aris Mining, we started as a $5 million shell looking for assets, and we focused on Colombia. That's now coming on a $4 billion company. It's the largest gold exporter out of Colombia in a frame of 5 years. And I attribute a lot of it to Neil. He's an absolute mastermind at the deal making. But being along his side, and I'd worked with him for the last 10 years, it was an amazing learning opportunity that I've used to come into Rua Gold. And I'm a finance guy by trade, but to be honest, I've spent most of my time on mine sites. So between Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, I lived in the DRC for a couple of years, and so I don't have the traditional finance upbringing. I'm definitely more commercial focused on the mining front. Oliver Lennox King is another key person to mention. He's our second largest shareholder. He's had amazing success at Frontier Gold, at Rox Gold. He's built all of these companies from zero to over $1 billion exits, and he's a key driver of this. Paul Criddle, his right-hand man at Rox Gold, is with us as well, and comes with a really good technical know-how. The final key guy I'll talk about in this page here is Simon Henderson.
Thank you.
Simon is our COO. He actually was part of this company back in 2019 when it was still private and founded. And he spent 5 years before we went public actually looking at the ground and doing all the precursors to a decent drill campaign that you can do. And he's one of the perfect crusty old geologists, 75 years old, that has been in the field all this time. And he doesn't want to run around chasing capital markets like I need to. He just wants to run the drill campaign. So you've got a really well-experienced geo that's down there in New Zealand. He's got over 40 years experience in New Zealand, so he knows the stakeholders and he knows exactly what he's looking for. And again, as we talk through some of the assets, it'll be key to where Simon comes into the story. But before we get to the assets themselves, the cap structure as we stand today, which is also very important for your listeners, very tight structure, 84 million shares out. We're in an amazing gold cycle right now, and I always question any company that's raising with a warrant attached to it right now when you're in such a bull cycle. But I will mention that over the last 2 years that we've been listed, before we've had this amazing gold tape, we've never done a raise with a warrant attached. We're really well supported. All of it is heavily institutionally backed. And this is when we were back at 20 million market cap. We're now 5 times that now. But all the way through that journey, we've been institutionally supported because we've made so much money for these guys in the past. So there's never been an issue of raising money. We try and do it at accretive prices each time we come back to the market. And right now we're trading at about 60% higher than our last raise price in June. And so we've got a good, strong, supportive shareholder base. 17% of our float is retail, which means we don't have huge liquidity in our volume of trading, but we're doing a few things on our side to increase that liquidity. And when that moves, it moves a lot higher with the talk because the pool of retail investors is so much lower. So we're going to work on 2026 on increasing our liquidity, increasing our awareness. I'll spend a lot more time on the road throughout North America, Oceania, and Europe, getting the story of Rua Gold out there and increasing our shareholder base. The final thing I'll mention here is the blue pie here is Siren Gold. That's a 17% shareholder. That's actually come about through some M&A down in the South Island as part of our assets that I'll just touch on. But they're a key shareholder and they're very supportive and want to see us develop the Reefton district. Any questions from your side, Peter, on people or New Zealand or structure before we move into the actual assets themselves?
Yeah, maybe, what is the average price of the management team, if you may tell me?
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point because we're not a group that's paying ourselves free stock or 1 cent stock and asking everyone to put money in. Our average cost price of that 20% that we own right now is around the 75-cent mark. So we've been buying on the market. We've participated in every single financing. We've coming in alongside shareholders and making sure we're aligned.
Yes, I see that also, and it's now somewhat higher, but it's still not much.
It's not
so it's still the big gains is still ahead of us. Okay.
And then one thing worth mentioning, which isn't on here, is the cash that we have in bank right now. So we raised 40 million in June. We've been running a pretty aggressive drill program, and we currently closed the year with just over $9 million in cash.
Yes, I wanted to ask that later concerning the plans for example, this year. but okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay,
Should we get
that's
into
good to know.
the assets?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Excellent. So Rua Gold has two assets in New Zealand, one on the North Island and one on the South Island, and they each have a different value proposition altogether. The North Island of New Zealand is what you imagine as the volcanic epithermal region of New Zealand, where the hot springs are and Lake Taupo and these beautiful places. But with these epithermal regions comes epithermal deposits, which are world class. And 15 million ounces of gold has come out of that Hauraki Goldfield. And we're going to start there with the story before moving south to the Reefton Goldfield, which is this orogenic deposit. So focusing on the Hauraki, epithermal geology is generally the highest gold grade out there in the world. And the production that comes out of it is always elephant grade deposits. They're monsters. And if you're going to go elephant hunting, you need to go where the elephants are. And this is the Hauraki Goldfield. Waihi open pit has been producing since the 1980s. And Simon, our COO, actually was the senior resource geologist that delineated that open pit when it was still a hill. So you've got the Waihi open pit here. It's been going for 40 plus years. Over 10 million ounces have now come out of that open pit, and it's still got 2 million ounces of reserves left. So you're in this long-standing gold community. The whole town, as you can see in that picture, is built around that open pit. So I know I say that this is a nice part of New Zealand. It's the rolling hills, it's the Lord of the Rings, all those things you imagine. But there are pockets of New Zealand that are very mining centric and mining friendly. And so this is one of those. Further to that point, OceanaGold's biggest pipeline project is that next box north of WKP. WKP is the first mining project that's gone through the fast track regime and is now fully permitted and under construction. That took, they targeted a 6-month permitting regime in New Zealand. Wharekiraupunga took 8 months because it was the first mining project to go through that process. But an 8-month mine permit process is still unreal by any means. So amazing to be next to a neighbor that has 1.5 million ounces of 18 grams a ton and is now moving from Explorco into development. And we have the Glamorgan asset. And so again, to talk about where Simon fits into this, after Simon spent 14 years on the Waihi open pit, and this is when Newmont owned it before OceanaGold had it, he actually delineated it, spent a long time. Then he started seeing some interesting stuff north at WKP and Glamorgan. Newmont weren't interested in chasing it, and so he actually left the company and he staked it himself on his own, and essentially went to Toronto and raised a bunch of money with Eric Sprott and started his TSXV company called Glass Earth Minerals. And he was the first one to actually stake WKP and Glamorgan. He was the one that found the surface anomalies and actually discovered WKP. So we don't just have the ground adjacent to WKP. We have the actual geologist that discovered WKP in the first place, that knows all the things to look for, and has come in and picked up Glamorgan and identified something 3 kilometers north that looks identical to the neighboring mine. And the rock chip samples, we've got this ladder bladed quartz that has really nice 43 gram a ton rock chip samples coming out, and it looks very similar to the WKP core. So we're really excited about Glamorgan. We picked this up in 2023, so it came after the Reefton assets. The Reefton assets is where we had our foundational assets, but we picked this up in 2023. We got our surface access to this property in 2024, and we've done all the precursors to drilling over that following year. So we spent a year doing magnetics and royal rock chip sampling, soil sampling, resistivity. We've done a lot of mapping. We've done all the precursors to drilling that you want to do. It took us a year. And then come June, we got our permits ready and we submitted our drill permits in July. And to be very frank, we were actually aiming to have the general processing of drill permits in New Zealand is about 4 to 6 months. And so we're aiming to be drilling by the end of the year. Unfortunately, we got stuck behind the WKP fast track permit process, and the government just didn't have the resources to be allocating out to our permits as well. but we got told that we're in line behind them. They got their permit for WKP December 18. We've had really good back and forth with the regulators. They're looking through our drill permits now. We're really expecting to be ready and drilling by April, if not sooner this year. So for shareholders, for anyone coming into the story, this is one of the last undrilled epithermals, at least in the first world. They're out there, they're up in PNG and in much more difficult jurisdictions to operate. But if you want to go to a safe jurisdiction with a good workforce and a good infrastructure and a good government, et cetera, there's not many undrilled epithermals left, and this is one of them. And again, we're neighboring some really high-grade, long-life assets already. So this is the sort of exploration pizzazz, the upside. Geologists love this one way more. It just sounds strange as the CEO. My personal favorite is always Reefton, but that's my finance background coming through, and I'll explain that. But this one is getting a lot of the people excited and a lot of people positioning ahead of our initial drill campaign kicking off this year. Any questions from your side, Peter, on Glamorgan before we move south?
I think after the Reefton part,
sure.
I will have some.
So as I mentioned, coming into my favorite Reefton district is you're in this orogenic greenstone belt. You're in this area called Reef Town because a whole bunch of gold reefs were found here back in the early 1900s, and there was a gold rush where 2 million ounces was taken out at 25 grams a ton. So you really high grade area. And we've managed over the last 6 years to actually wrap up the whole district. We've got 95% of the Reefton tenements under our control. So we've got a scale play. If you have a small piece of an orogenic greenstone belt, you enter a bit more higher risk. If you've got the whole greenstone belt under your control, it's just a matter of time before you find the big honking veins that will carry millions of ounces of gold. So we've managed to pick up the whole district for that exact reason. And this is where I attribute a lot of my learnings from Neil, because when we listed this company, and I'll get an annotator going now, when we listed Rua Gold, we actually just had the north area here. We had 35,000 hectares under our control. It was very prospective, 4 historic mines on there. We had really good interest and we were excited about what we had. And we came out to the market March 2024, sorry. And we had some good drill results. We had some really good traction. We quickly went from a $20 million company to a $50 million company. And I saw the opportunity to work with our neighbors, Siren Gold. It's an ASX company. The Aussies hadn't quite woken up to the permissive environment of New Zealand, and they were trading at around a 16 million Australian market cap. And so I said to the Siren guys, I said, I just want your assets. I don't want to take over your company. You have some other assets 200 kilometers north that I'm not really interested in, but I'll pay you 18 million in script in shares of Rua Gold and 2 million in cash. So I paid them 20 million while their market cap was 16 million. And we took over that Reefton district. And that was an absolute steal. And I felt it was an absolute steal. We had supportive investors that we helped with a raise of $8 million at that time to help support that investment. But furthermore, the real solidifier was when we were closing that deal, just before the shareholder vote, this little L shape in the middle is a group called Endura Mining. Back then it was called Federation Mining. And they saw that we were taking over the whole district. These guys were absolute juggernauts in the mining space. Right now it's run by a guy called Jake Klein. He's one of the Australian darlings. He built Evolution Mining, which is coming on to a $20 billion gold mining company. He now runs Endura Mining. These guys have raised $400 million for that small little L shape. They're fully permitted and they're going to be producing gold by the end of the year. So when we essentially enveloped their land package, they saw their strategic opportunity for an expansion fall away, and they tried to interlope. Luckily for us, we tied up enough of the shareholders ahead of time that we got the deal done, and now we control the Reefton district. And that was as of November 2024. So 2025 was the first year we've really had the land under our control, that we really could attack it from an exploration standpoint. And we focused most of the year across that district, looking at Auld Creek as the #1 target and looking at Cumberland as a #2 target. So 2 drill rigs were running on Auld Creek for the balance of H2 2025. We completed about 6,000 meters of drilling there over the year, and we initiated our first drill program over at Cumberland, chasing up a high-grade gold vein that we're looking at as well. Just touching on what you're seeing here, this whole town is Reefton is a whole mining town, and currently what you have is active coal mines all along the edges of Reefton and across the mountains here. So there's no shortage of mining skills. You've got, again, a supportive mining community, and just like the North Island, you're in an area that likes mining and accepts mining, and it's not just the Lord of the Rings rolling hills of New Zealand. You've got a town that relies on mining to survive. And we really want to bring that back to Reefton in a big way from a gold mining perspective. It was a gold mining town in the early days, and we think we can generate another 50-year mine out here in Reefton. I skipped over this slide, but just to touch on it, this is really showing what the old timers did in the Reefton district. So we looked at all those targets on the previous slide. The old timers essentially had the ability to go down 500 meters, 300 meters, 200 meters. They didn't have the technology in the early 1900s to mine at the depths that we mine in today's world. So this whole district is untested at depth. There's a real opportunity that these orogenic style mineralizations go really deep, and that's synonymous with an orogenic type mineralization. And that's exactly what that little L shape Endura mining has done. The previous mine went down 700 meters, and that was collapsed in the 1940s, and it never was revisited. Endura mining went in, raised the money, and built a twin decline 4 kilometers long, all the way down to the top of this resource, and they drilled to get their 800,000 ounces at 23 grams a ton. So they've proven that these things run all the way down to 1,500 meters, and it just proves that there's a lot of gold left in the Reefton district. So it's our job to essentially make sure we can find it as quickly and as cheaply as possible, and that's where we're focused on Auld Creek to begin with. Auld Creek didn't have any historic mining on there, or very limited historic mining, and the reason behind that is in the 1900s, the co-products that came with some of these deposits is stibnite or antimony. And if there was too much antimony, it would ruin the gold recoveries for these guys. Today, with the processing technology, with the flow sheets that we know now, the co-product of antimony is negligible. We can easily extract the gold out of it without it being a problem. But even more so, the antimony price over the last couple of years has gone up 6-fold. And so now you've got a really valuable byproduct, because antimony is on every single country's critical minerals list. And it's very strategic, because this is one of the few critical minerals projects that New Zealand has in its arsenal. And so when it comes, putting aside the economics of antimony being very well priced at somewhere in the range of $50,000-$60,000 a ton, the actual strategic importance of having the antimony as a byproduct is so good, because it will put us at the front of the list when it comes to getting this thing permitted. So we're really excited about what we're seeing at Auld Creek. This is our #1 focus, and the strategy here is to focus on one of the targets within Reefton, which is Auld Creek, prove out a resource, and we're going to be publishing a 43-101 next month, and really showing the possibilities that you can have a starter mine here, take advantage of the 6-month permitting process, be fully permitted by early 2027, and be in construction and have a mine built by early 2028 and producing cash, so that we don't have to blow our brains out and dilute ourselves to oblivion just to uncover the whole district. I mean, there's no shortage of targets to go after here, but we don't want to dilute ourselves. We're very heavily invested in this company. We're really aligned with a shareholder that has shares, and so we want to do this in the most accretive way possible. And so we're in a hurry to get cash flowing, to make sure we're using our own money to actually get through the drilling expansion. And Auld Creek, what we're looking at right now, is an at-surface resource, a little limited development cost. We're estimating, and we need to kick off a PEA, but in this early stage, as a thumb suck, we're estimating that around the circa $150 million US CapEx to get this from where it stands as a piece of ground into production. So it's a nice, small, bite-sized CapEx. It's not huge because the grades are so high, so you can build a little 200,000 ton per annum plant and produce somewhere in the range of 50 to 70,000 ounces equivalent each year. And it's just a nice starter to churn out some cash flow to keep expanding the district. And when we design our plants and when we build our operations, we'll build it with 3x upsize capacity, because the idea is we'll bring on Auld Creek as number one, while we'll continue expanding and exploring the other districts. And as soon as we find something economic in another area, whether it's Murray Creek, whether it's Capelston, whether it's Alexander River, we'll create this hub and spoke type model where they'll all feed the centralized plant. And that's very similar to what Aris Gold has right now, where Segovia Mine, their cash cow that's producing 200,000 ounces with a pathway to 300,000 ounces, is getting feed from 4 different underground mines feeding 1 mill. Similar type of idea here is building the upsize capacity. That plant at Aris, we upsized 3 times to where it is to get it to today. And so you can build the upsize capacity from the start so that we can increase the scale of this, because I don't want to sit here with a 60,000 ounce mine for the rest of my career. I want to be able to build it into something more scalable.
Okay.
I think that covers it without getting too deeper into the geology. I mean, the one thing I will mention is that little box here is what we're looking at with our current resource at Auld Creek. The soil anomaly extends another 1.5 kilometers north. There's some repeating soil anomalies out east here that we need to look. So we're going to have a resource of somewhere in the range of 300,000 to 500,000 ounces. But really, the bigger picture of what we're going to put into production is going to be targeting it at being closer to the 1 million ounce mark by the time we've gone through the permitting and the design and the construction. Will have given us plenty of runway to keep exploring that Auld Creek district and increase that footprint.
Okay. I like what I'm hearing, definitely. So it was a lot of information at the end. So if I'm could you please summarize it? So if I'm hearing this correctly, you will in February-ish, you will have a resource estimate for Auld Creek, and that's also only a little part of the whole Reefton field. And then after that, you have production inside, at least a plan to produce.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I see where you're going. So maybe laying out the path, and we'll start sort of, as you said, what is the path on a go forward basis for investors to worry about?
That's also one.
Yeah. So for the Reefton Goldfield, as you said, 43-101 will come out next month. That'll give us resource to talk about. It's not our ending resource, it's just our beginning resource. And so that's really just showing that we've got something economic there. But that'll show that there's an economic project to the New Zealand government with antimony attached to it. That'll give us essentially the creds to go to the New Zealand government and apply to be on that fast track list. So we're aiming by H1 this year to be a fast track approved project. And what that means is that we qualify for the 6-month permitting process. Not every project in New Zealand will qualify for that, only specific ones. And we think we have a really good shot at qualifying for it, especially because we're an antimony byproduct. So that's step one is 43-101 to begin with. In H1, we want to be a qualified fast track project in the Reefton district. And that will be a game changer because that'll show our investors that we can get this permitted in 6 months. On top of that, we're already kicking off the studies and we're kicking off the PEA process so that by the end of the year, we want to have a fully submitted mining application going into the New Zealand government so that they can kick off that assuming 6-month process and be fully approved by H1 2027. And once we're fully approved in H1 2027, we'll then start the construction process, and we expect that to be no more than 1 year with this quite well understood 200,000 ton per annum plant. And that's really the pathway to production. Interspersed amongst all of that is going to be a drill program that we're going to carry on, that we're going to increase our footprint. We're always going to be looking at Auld Creek and expanding the resource so that by the time we one, finish the PEA, we'll have a new resource. Two, by the time we finish construction, we'll have an even better idea of the resource. So we're sort of running our exploration campaign and our studies concurrently to expedite the process to cash flow. And we're doing that, and it takes a little bit of a risk because you never know that the geology is going to back up the actual mine plan. But we've done a fair amount of surface work, and we really understand the resource well, that we feel fairly confident in that approach.
Okay. So you put me again in the bad habit, because every time I talk to you, I want to buy more shares, because if I would ask, so how will this exploration activity increase the shareholder value? Then you just answered it. It's an ambitious plan, but with good reason. So it's a good educated. I would not call it guess. I would call it plan.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean,
Okay.
my job
Yeah.
sitting here is to how do we create value for shareholders, and
Yeah.
I don't want to sit here and just twiddle my thumbs while Simon, because Simon doesn't need me. He's a very well-informed geologist, and he can keep drilling away for years and create value in the traditional way. But the real way to add value quicker is to de-risk the project, and we're
Yes.
going through that permitting process to de-risk it to add value in that way at the same time.
Yes, and next to exploring further, you already apply for the permits, and then you are getting ready to produce, and you would use also this cash flow for further exploration. And that's
Correct.
what
Yeah.
you explained, that you go to the other small pockets, and then you can increase the production easily, just attach to it, and then okay. So it's amazing. It's fascinating what you just explained to us. Thank you very much. And you mentioned also the low CapEx needs. Probably it's we are looking roughly about 150 million. It's not so much in this world.
Yeah, and we're somewhat comfortable with that because
Mm-hmm.
if anyone knows the Rocks Gold story, this is actually very much similar to how Oliver and Paul built Rocks Gold, and
Mm-hmm.
Rocks Gold was the mine. Paul Criddle was the mine builder for Rocks Gold, and he back then it was now 6 years ago. So I'm not talking today's numbers, but back then he built the plant for 70 million US, and that was in West Africa in a much more remote area. And so obviously applying some inflation factors and
Yeah.
applying the world we live in today and some development CapEx, we think that's closer to the 150 mark.
Yeah, it's still I think in this world a low amount. Okay, thank you. So you outlined it very well. And if I may ask, from 2025, what you've done, what are you most proud of personally,
Yeah, I mean, I
if
think
you can pick one?
Yeah, I think 2025, we entered the year as quite a difficult year. We had a sort of 60-cent share price. We actually done the Siren deal, and this is admitting all our warts right now. We essentially
Mhm.
did the Siren deal at $1.20 and closed out and took over that whole district. And we ended the year on a 60-cent share price, and we're in a difficult place because some of our shareholders actually didn't like that deal. They didn't understand the district scale play. They thought it was a lot of risk exposure in Reefton. Fast forward to now, I think it was a great move, and I think anyone that did any M&A back in 2024, fast forward to now, has been a great move, especially with the quantity prices. But we started 2025 in a very difficult capital market position. We're thankfully very well supported again by existing shareholders and institutions that saw our vision. And I think most proud of is in a difficult market, we raised $20 million across the two raises that we did at less than a 3% discount to where we were trading at the market, again, without any warrant. And that's very unheard of in this market. So it really kudos to our strong shareholder base that support us in the tough times, and they're carrying us through because similar to what you just said, they really see the vision of actually creating a real value, accretive company here. So that was a really good win from my perspective. from Simon's perspective and speaking for our geology experience, the Auld Creek discovery hasn't just come about by itself. I mean, we had a few good drill holes back in 2024 that we inherited from Siren, but the first half of 2025, the team spent a huge amount of time on Auld Creek trying to understand the direction, the dip, and how that resource is going. And once they did that, we initiated this what we call a 5,000-meter drill campaign in the second half of the year. And the first thing we did is we understand that we had a pretty good resource here. We then, and I speak as we as in the geology team should take all the credit for this, the exploration team in New Zealand, they put in some deep holes below and it hit. And some of these deep holes we're talking about hitting 2 meters of 64 grams a ton, like really nice high grade. So they quickly proved that that resource continues out at depth and is still open at depth. They then said, well, let's not keep stepping out. Let's go all the way 200 meters north and see what's out here. And they said, we think it's going in this direction. They went 200 meters north. And again, they hit it and they hit really great high grade hits. And so in the meantime, in the last couple of months of the year, they've been infilling across here and we'll have those drill results out within the next few days. We'll have an exploration update next week. But I'm really proud of what our exploration team have done in terms of understanding what Auld Creek does and what it looks like and which direction it goes. And so that's been a really good achievement and given us the confidence to go through this next phase of development.
Thank you. That's nice. If I may have a few more questions, I think at least three. So within Reefton, within the Reefton field, or just Auld Creek, I won't hold you to it. Just roughly, what do you expect in economic value between gold and antimony? For example, 80% gold value is coming from it, at 20% antimony, or 50-50, or what is your expectation? Just
I think
what we can see now.
At least at the get-go, and our initial resource will only go 300 or 400 meters deep. We're not going to go deep to the world of 1,500-meter drill holes. That's too expensive. But in that first 400-meter layer of the resource, I expect it to be about a 70-30 gold to antimony split.
Okay.
And that's based on a couple of things, based on what we're seeing already. But also the whole team did a site visit down to Costerfield, which is Alkane's gold-antimony mine in Victoria. They did a site visit there in October last year to really understand, because the mineralization is exactly the same. And they looked at the flow sheet, the mineralization, and we have really good relationships with some of these neighbors that are seeing the exact same things that we see. And they noted that the antimony is in higher percentages in the top sort of 500 meters. And then after that, it gets stronger gold and less antimony. So I say that 70-30 split, at least knowing that the top part of the resource will be more rich in antimony. But as you get deeper, the antimony generally gets weaker as we go.
Okay. And what do you plan with the Hauraki field? So this year, then you plan to drill it, right? And maybe end of this year, you have some first results?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, if all things going well, and after we missed my December target of getting drill permits, I'm always scared to commit to, but we really feel like April we will have our drill permits. We think we'll be drilling within the next week. As soon as we get our drill permits, our drilling contractor is up there. He's ready to go. He's the same contractor that Oceana Gold used for WKP. So he knows the area. He's very comfortable working up there. It'll take him 2 weeks to stand up and get going. So we'll aim to be having drill results out by June. So we'll be starting our drilling in April. By the time we drill the first few holes, get them off to assay labs, I think June we'll be having our first results. And there's not going to be, like Auld Creek, we're putting a 50-meter pattern in to build an inferred resource. Up in the Hauraki, we're going to be very much exploration drilling. And so it's going to be in a wedge style shape where we do a 75-meter, a 150-meter, and a 250-meter hole in a fan. And that's very much exploratory to try and work out what we're looking at under there on the very first few drill holes. So we've got 9 drill pads gone into that permit. We've got about 5,000 meters of really well-defined drilling to do, and then based on those first results, we'll then see where we go to after that.
May I ask you to go back in the slides to this field, Hauraki,
Sure.
just a big picture, and where you can see the whole field on the map.
Yep.
For example, this one. So just to have an idea of where you will start to
Yes.
drill.
So
This one I see circled. Okay.
from the surface work, we've got two really interesting anomalies that are occurring in a parallel fashion to where WKP is, which is less than 3 kilometers away. And that's 3 kilometers from alteration to alteration, not just from tenements. So these are the key two targets. And then across some of the work we've done and a lot of the magnetics and the soil sampling, it overlaps where some of these anomalies are coming together. And so some of the drill pads are spread across, these 9 drill pads are spread across all these circles that we see here.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll be testing, especially where they overlap, is where we'll be focusing our initial attention, because when all the data lines up that something interesting is going on, that's where you have to start your drill testing. And Simon is really good at doing the ranking, completing a ranking system. And we're also going to overlay, we have Verify in the background with their AI technology. They'll help with the ranking system as well. And we'll see where we start, but that's really what we're going to be focusing on.
Thank you for the clarification for me. Okay, and maybe my last question would be that for these plans of this year, at least, you need some money, which is normal. You have already 9 million in the bank. How much would it cost, and how do you plan to raise this money? There are multiple options, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this stage, I think if we took on any debts or streaming or anything like that, we'd be hampering ourselves. I think to keep the story very simple, we will go back to the equity markets. Based on commencing drilling in the North Island in April and having 3 rigs on the South Island in Reefton, we have a burn rate that will see us fully funded until September.
Okay.
So there's a lot we can deliver in that time.
Sure.
And then we'll have to tap the equity markets again. So there will be a time we come back to the equity markets, but at the same time, that's never a scary thing for us, because, as I mentioned, all of our raises we've done have been almost at market, again, with no warrants. So we don't suffer the predatory financings that some others unfortunately have. We're lucky that we're well supported. And so I think the next raise will do a bigger raise, because the outlook looks like the sort of burn rate with 5 rigs running across the 2 projects sees us burning about $1 million a month in drilling costs, and that gets us 1,000 meters a month. So it's a decent program, but yeah, we'll be wanting to move pretty quickly, and we don't want to mess around. So we'll be ramping up activities based on how much treasury we can get. And so right now, we'll test the market sometime this year, and we'll see how much we can raise, and based on that, we'll probably increase the cadence of drilling and start moving even quicker, because we're only getting older and the gold cycle's only getting hotter. So
Yes.
we should be moving as quickly as we can.
Yeah, and I don't mind it, because I see that this will generate the more value
Correct. Yeah.
per share base. So okay.
Yeah, and we're always conscious of time value as well. You don't want to sit here. I mean, ideally, I wouldn't sit here with 3 rigs running at Reefton all year. I'd be able to move quicker and quicker as we go forward.
Yes, indeed. Okay, thank you very much. I know our time is limited, so I have to stop. I could talk to you for hours, but is there something I still should ask, what I forgot to ask, but something
No,
you would like to add?
I think the only thing I'll mention, and one thing we're doing, is we are maturing our listings a bit as well, and we'll upgrade from the venture to the big board of the TSX.
Mm-hmm.
And the primary driver for that is then in New Zealand you can get a essentially foreign exempt issuer listing. So we want to be a New Zealand listed company. We're very New Zealand centric. We have a lot of interested New Zealand shareholders. I get an email a week from someone in New Zealand saying, how do I buy Rua shares? I can't buy on the TSX. So we're going to move towards that NZX listing. And depending on how quick your post-production capabilities are, I'm planning a road trip down there in February 9. So we're aiming to have that all done and dusted by early February, which will be very important.
I envy you. I also would like to go with you. Okay.
You're welcome.
Well, maybe next time. Yeah, I hope. Okay. Thank you very much. And if people would like to learn more, where can they find you? Who should they contact?
You can go straight to the contact page in our website, and you can put a form in there, and it actually goes directly to me. There's info@ruagold.com, which I also manage, and people can get hold of me that way. It's probably the easiest.
I put the links in the description below.
Sounds good. And if there's a public question, another one way people talk to me is publicly through ceo.ca. And if people have a question that they want to make public and that other people might be interested in, you can post it on ceo.ca on our Rua page, and I can come back to you there as well.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. I believe it was beneficial for everyone, this update and also introduction. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Ciao.